The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. The story, a summary. Shylock the Jew lived in the bustling city of Venice. As an usurer, he had managed to amass a vast fortune by lending money to Christian merchants at exorbitant interest rates. However, his heart was as hardened as his business dealings, as he would ruthlessly demand repayment with utmost severity. This demeanor earned him the disdain of all those who valued kindness and fairness, particularly a young merchant named Antonio. Antonio despised Shylock's usurious practices, for he was a generous and compassionate man. Unlike the Jewish moneylender, Antonio never charged interest when lending money to those in need. This stark contrast in character bred a deep mutual enmity between the two. Whenever they crossed paths on the Rialto, the bustling Venetian marketplace, Antonio would openly reproach Shylock, condemning his usury and harsh treatment of debtors. To the outside world, Shylock appeared to bear these insults with patience, but little did they know that a secret desire for revenge was festering within the Jewish moneylender. Now Antonio was a man of remarkable kindness and noble spirit. His actions were always driven by a genuine desire to help others, and he was greatly adored by his fellow citizens. However, there was one person who held a special place in his heart: Bassanio, a noble Venetian and dear friend. Bassanio, despite his noble lineage, had fallen upon difficult financial times. His lavish lifestyle had nearly depleted his limited inheritance, a common pitfall for young men of high rank with small fortunes. Whenever Bassanio found himself in need of funds, Antonio would readily come to his aid. It seemed as if they shared not just a strong friendship, but also a single heart and purse. Antonio's unwavering support for his friend knew no bounds, for he believed in the power of true friendship and was willing to sacrifice his own resources to bring happiness to those he loved. The bond between Antonio and Bassanio was inseparable, a testament to their genuine connection and mutual respect. It was this bond that would soon lead them down a path of trials and tribulations as the time came for Bassanio to seek financial assistance once more. Little did they know that their fateful choices would have far-reaching consequences, not just for them, but for all those intertwined in their lives in the city of Venice. One day Bassanio approached his dear friend Antonio with a desperate plea. He yearned to mend his fortune through a prosperous marriage to a lady he deeply loved. This lady, whose father had recently passed away, had inherited a vast estate, making her a most desirable match. During his visits to her house in her father's lifetime, Bassanio had noticed what he believed to be subtle yet unmistakable signals of affection from her eyes. These unspoken messages seemed to convey that he would be welcomed as a suitor. However, Bassanio lacked the financial means to present himself as a suitable match for such a wealthy heiress. With hope in his heart, Bassanio turned to Antonio, requesting his assistance in securing a loan of 3,000 ducats. Unfortunately, Antonio did not have the funds readily available. Nevertheless, he assured Bassanio that he would help by borrowing the amount from Shylock, a wealthy moneylender, and he will be able to repay it once his ships returned with their valuable cargo. Desperate for the money, the duo approached Shylock together. Antonio humbly asked the Jewish moneylender to lend him the requested sum, assuring him that he would repay it with interest from the merchandise on his ships. As Shylock considered this proposition, a devious plan began to form in his mind. He saw an opportunity to exact revenge on Antonio, whom he had long held a grudge against. Shylock knew that Antonio despised his Jewish heritage and his business practices, which included lending money with interest. Bitterness filled Shylock's heart as he contemplated the chance to avenge the mistreatment he and his fellow Jews had endured at the hands of Antonio. He thought, "If I can exploit this situation, I will have the perfect opportunity to satisfy my long-standing animosity. Antonio, the merchant who openly criticizes my lending practices, will now be at my mercy. Let him endure the consequences of his prejudice and hatred. I swear on my Jewish heritage that I will not forgive him." While Shylock remained lost in his thoughts, Antonio grew impatient. He urgently asked the moneylender, "Shylock, are you listening? Will you lend me the money?" At these words, Shylock's anger boiled to the surface. He began to recount the insults and humiliation he had endured from Antonio in the past. The Jew endured Antonio's derogatory remarks about his money and his business practices, enduring them with a patient shrug. He endured Antonio's slurs and spitting upon his Jewish garments, even enduring the act of being spurned like a dog with a kick from Antonio's foot. Finally, Shylock responded to Antonio, his words simmering with resentment and frustration. He said, "Now, Antonio, you come to me seeking my help. You ask, 'Shylock, lend me money.' But tell me, does a dog have money? Can a lowly cur lend 3,000 ducats? Should I stoop down and reply, 'Dear sir, you spat upon me just last Wednesday, called me a dog, and showered insults upon me, and for these courtesies I am expected to lend you money?'" Antonio did not remain silent in the face of Shylock's scorn. He bravely retorted, "I am just as likely to insult you again, to spit on you once more, and to scornfully reject you. If you lend me this money, do so not as a friend, but rather as an enemy, so that if I fail to repay, you will have every right to claim the penalty and exact your revenge." Shylock, feigning kindness and still pursuing his ulterior motives, responded with an unexpected offer. He declared that he would befriend Antonio and provide him with the needed funds without charging any interest. Astonished by this seemingly generous gesture, Antonio could not help but be taken aback. Shylock insisted that he wanted nothing more than to gain Antonio's love and friendship. However, there was a catch. In the spirit of merry sport, Shylock proposed that Antonio accompany him to a lawyer and sign a bond. This bond stipulated that if Antonio failed to repay the loan by a specified date, he would be required to surrender a pound of flesh, to be cut off from any part of his body as Shylock saw fit. The air grew tense as this proposition hung in the balance, its true nature shrouded in ambiguity. Would Antonio succumb to the temptation of acquiring the funds he so desperately needed, or would he realize the grave consequences lurking within Shylock's seemingly innocuous offer? The lawsuit would test the limits of their identities and question the very essence of mercy, prejudice, and revenge. Content plays a crucial role in shaping the narrative of a story. In this excerpt from William Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, the plot thickens as the characters face a test of loyalty and friendship. We witness the unwavering determination of Antonio, who willingly signs a bond at the insistence of Shylock, a Jewish moneylender. Antonio's steadfast belief that his ships will return laden with riches before the bond's due date reveals his unyielding trust in his ventures and the potential for lucrative gains. However, Bassanio, the recipient of Antonio's generosity, displays concern and reluctance, fearing the dire consequences that lie ahead. Amidst the dialogue, Shylock astutely observes the suspicious nature of Christians, drawing attention to their tendency to suspect others due to their own experiences with deceit. He questions the value and morality of the forfeiture, arguing that the flesh of a man cannot possibly hold the same worth as that of animals like mutton or beef. Shylock's offer to buy Antonio's favor through friendship further demonstrates the complex dynamics at play within this tale. Despite Bassanio's advising against it, Antonio proceeds with signing the bond, under the belief that it is all in jest, as claimed by Shylock. Unbeknownst to him, this decision will have far-reaching consequences, setting the stage for the unfolding drama. In the midst of this intense storyline, we also catch a glimpse of Belmont, the enchanting place where Bassanio's heart lies. It is here that Portia, a rich heiress, resides. Portia, just like her namesake from ancient Rome, possesses a captivating blend of beauty and intelligence, making her a sought-after prize. Bassanio, fueled by the support and financial aid provided by Antonio, embarks on a journey to Belmont, accompanied by his loyal friend and servant Gratiano. Together, they set off to court Portia, with dreams of love and wealth dancing in their minds. As this scene concludes, the intertwining threads of friendship, loyalty, and love are woven into the fabric of the story, leaving readers eagerly anticipating the next act. Shakespeare's lyrical prose and captivating characters continue to enthrall audiences, reminding us of the timeless power of his storytelling. In that blissful moment, as Bassanio stood before Portia, his heart swelled with a mixture of happiness and disbelief. The realization that he, a man of modest means, had won the heart of such an extraordinary woman was almost overwhelming. As he gazed into her eyes, he saw a love that knew no bounds, a love that saw beyond worldly possessions and embraced the essence of his character. With heartfelt sincerity, Bassanio confessed his lack of fortune to Portia, revealing that his noble lineage was the only legacy he possessed. But in that vulnerable admission, he found solace in the knowledge that Portia loved him not for his material wealth, but for the qualities that defined his being. Portia, ever graceful and compassionate, responded to his words with a modesty that endeared her even further to Bassanio's heart. She expressed her desire to be even more deserving of him, wishing for greater beauty and wealth to match his worth. Yet in her self-deprecation she humbly acknowledged her own potential for growth and vowed to be guided by Bassanio in all things. "Myself and what is mine, to you and yours is now converted," Portia declared, as she presented Bassanio with a ring, a symbol of their eternal bond. In that moment, the humble abode that had been Portia's became their shared home, and her loyal servants pledged their allegiance to Bassanio, their new master. Overwhelmed by gratitude and awe, Bassanio struggled to find adequate words to express his love and appreciation for the remarkable woman who had chosen him. He clung to the ring, vowing never to part with it, as a tangible reminder of Portia's unwavering devotion. Meanwhile, Gratiano and Nerissa, witnesses to the profound declaration of love, celebrated the joyous union of their lord and lady. Drawn by the beautiful example set before them, Gratiano himself seized the opportunity and sought permission to marry as well, hoping to embark on a similar path of love and happiness. With a warm smile, Bassanio granted his loyal friend's request, saying, "With all my heart, Gratiano, if you can find a wife." And so love and matrimony intertwined their destinies, binding the lives of these cherished characters in an unbreakable bond. In the realm of heartfelt connections and profound declarations, miracles materialize, illustrating the power of true love to transcend social expectations and material wealth. The story of Bassanio and Portia serves as a timeless reminder that the greatest treasures are found not in outer riches, but in the depths of human connection and the purity of the heart. The happiness of these lovers was sadly crossed at this moment by the entrance of a messenger, who brought a letter from Antonio containing fearful tidings. When Bassanio read Antonio's letter, Portia feared it was to tell him of the death of some dear friend. He looked so pale, and inquiring what was the news which had so distressed him, he said, "O sweet Portia, here are a few of the unpleasantest words that ever blotted paper. Gentle lady, when I first imparted my love to you, I freely told you all the wealth I had ran in my veins, but I should have told you that I had less than nothing, being in debt." Bassanio then told Portia what has been here related, of his borrowing the money of Antonio, and of Antonio's procuring it of Shylock the Jew, and of the bond by which Antonio had engaged to forfeit a pound of flesh, if it was not repaid by a certain day. And then Bassanio read Antonio's letter, the words of which were, "Sweet Bassanio, my ships are all lost, my bond to the Jew is forfeited, and since in paying it is impossible I should live, I could wish to see you at my death. Notwithstanding, use your pleasure. If your love for me do not persuade you to come, let not my letter." "O my dear love," said Portia, "dispatch all business and begone. You shall have gold to pay the money 20 times over, before this kind friend shall lose a hair by my Bassanio's fault. And as you are so dearly bought, I will dearly love you." Portia then said she would be married to Bassanio before he set out, to give him a legal right to her money, and that same day they were married, and Gratiano was also married to Nerissa, and Bassanio and Gratiano the instant they were married, set out in great haste for Venice, where Bassanio found Antonio in prison. The day of payment being past, the cruel Jew would not accept the money which Bassanio offered him, but insisted upon having a pound of Antonio's flesh. A day was appointed to try this shocking case before the Duke of Venice, and Bassanio awaited in dreadful suspense the event of the trial. When Portia parted with her husband, she spoke cheeringly to him, and bade him bring his dear friend along with him when he returned. Yet she feared it would go hard with Antonio. And when she was left alone, she began to think and consider within herself if she could by any means be instrumental in saving the life of her dear Bassanio's friend. She wondered if it would be possible to intervene and ensure that justice would prevail in the courtroom. Portia knew that she possessed a sharp wit and a cunning mind, and she decided to take matters into her own hands. She devised a plan that would test the limits of the law and challenge the merciless nature of Shylock. Disguising herself as a learned lawyer, Portia prepared to enter the courtroom and deliver a powerful defense. As the day of the trial arrived, Portia made her way to the Duke's court, accompanied by her loyal servant Nerissa, both in men's attire. Upon her arrival, Portia was met with skepticism and doubt, as no one expected a young lawyer to possess such legal knowledge. But Portia was undeterred, and she confidently presented herself as a young doctor of the law. As Portia made her entrance into the court, disguised as a young doctor named Balthazar, her presence commanded the attention of everyone present. The Duke and senators of Venice, along with the merciless Jew, Shylock, all eagerly awaited to hear her arguments. Portia's heart pounded with determination as she began to methodically unravel the case before her. With eloquence and intelligence, she presented a compelling argument in defense of Antonio. Her words were woven together with precision, leaving no room for doubt or rebuttal. Shylock, on the other hand, found himself trapped in a web of his own making. Portia skillfully exposed the flaws in his claim, pointing out the cruel and unjust nature of his demand for a pound of Antonio's flesh. She argued that mercy should prevail over strict adherence to the law, urging the court to show compassion and spare Antonio's life. The importance of the arduous task Portia had engaged in gave this tender lady courage, and she boldly proceeded in the duty she had undertaken to perform, and first of all she addressed herself to Shylock, and allowing that he had a right by the Venetian law to have the forfeit expressed in the bond, she spoke so sweetly of the noble quality of mercy as would have softened any heart but the unfeeling Shylock's, saying that it dropped as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath, and how mercy was a double blessing. It blessed him that gave, and him that received it, and how it became monarchs better than their crowns, being an attribute of God himself, and that earthly power came nearest to God's, in proportion as mercy tempered justice. Shylock, however, only answered her by desiring to have the penalty forfeited in the bond. In the face of such stubbornness, Portia continued to demonstrate her wisdom and compassion. She questioned Shylock, asking if Antonio was not able to pay the money. Bassanio, determined to save his dear friend, then offered the Jew the payment of the 3,000 ducats as many times over as he should desire. Yet Shylock remained unmoved and persisted in his demand for a pound of Antonio's flesh. Faced with the grim prospect of losing Antonio, Bassanio pleaded with Portia to find a way to save him. Portia, in her innate wisdom, understood the gravity of the situation. However, she gravely answered that established laws must never be altered. It seemed as though Shylock, in his narrow perspective, misunderstood Portia's statement as her pleading in his favor. He exclaimed, "A Daniel is come to judgment. O wise young judge, how I do honor you! How much elder are you than your looks!" In this tense courtroom scene, Portia's eloquence and sagacity shone through. Her words carried the weight of moral principles and the essence of mercy. Despite Shylock's unyielding stance, Portia faced the challenge with grace and poise, showing the true depths of her character. Little did Shylock know that Portia held a secret that would soon turn the tables and deliver a just and unexpected outcome. Portia was determined to outsmart the cruel Shylock and save Antonio's life. She knew that she had to find a way to prevent the bond from taking effect. With great composure and intelligence, she began to devise a plan that would expose Shylock's merciless nature. With a calm and collected voice, Portia addressed Shylock. "Shylock, you insist on claiming your pound of flesh, but remember, the bond states that you may take a pound of flesh, but not a drop of blood. Have you considered the consequences of shedding a man's blood?" Shylock, confident in his position, scoffed and replied, "I care not for the blood. I care only for my revenge. Antonio must pay for his offences against me." Undeterred by Shylock's obstinacy, Portia continued, "Very well, Shylock. If you are so determined to proceed with this vengeful act, then let us proceed. However, I must remind you that the law governs us all, and we must follow its strict guidelines." Portia asked if the scales were ready to weigh the flesh, and she said to the Jew, "Shylock, you must have some surgeon by, lest he bleed to death." Shylock, whose whole intent was that Antonio should bleed to death, said, "It is not so named in the bond." Portia replied, "It is not so named in the bond, but what of that? It were good you did so much for charity." To this all the answer Shylock would make was, "I cannot find it. It is not in the bond." "Then," said Portia, "a pound of Antonio's flesh is thine. The law allows it, and the court awards it, and you may cut this flesh from his breast. The law allows it, and the court awards it." Again Shylock exclaimed, "O wise and upright judge, a Daniel is come to judgment." And then he sharpened his long knife again, and looking eagerly on Antonio, he said, "Come, prepare." "Tarry a little, Jew," said Portia. "There is something else. This bond here gives you no drop of blood. The words expressly are, a pound of flesh. If in the cutting off the pound of flesh you shed one drop of Christian blood, your lands and goods are by the law to be confiscated to the state of Venice." Now, as it was utterly impossible for Shylock to cut off the pound of flesh without shedding some of Antonio's blood, this wise discovery of Portia's, that it was flesh and not blood that was named in the bond, saved the life of Antonio, and all admiring the wonderful sagacity of the young counsellor who had so happily thought of this expedient, plaudits resounded from every part of the Senate house, and Gratiano exclaimed in the words which Shylock had used, "O wise and upright judge, mark, Jew, a Daniel is come to judgment." Portia glanced at a piece of parchment on her desk, pretending to search for a specific law. Sensing the tension in the courtroom, she took a deliberate pause, allowing everyone to hang on her every word. "At the risk of sounding peculiar, Shylock, it seems we have overlooked an important detail in this bond," Portia said, her eyes gleaming with mischievousness. "According to the fine print, it is within my power as the judge to enforce severe penalties for those who seek to harm others unlawfully." Shylock's expression suddenly shifted from smugness to confusion. He strained to understand what Portia was insinuating. Portia continued, her voice dripping with irony. "So, Shylock, if you were to shed one drop of Antonio's blood while extracting your pound of flesh, you would be in violation of the law, and the penalty? Your entire estate would be confiscated by the state, leaving you with nothing." Gasps filled the courtroom as the gravity of Portia's words settled in. Shylock's face turned pale, realizing that he had fallen into a well-orchestrated trap. Portia, now exuding both authority and compassion, offered Shylock one last chance at redemption. "Shylock, in your relentless pursuit of vengeance, have you not learned the value of mercy? While the law may allow you to seek retribution, it is also within my power to grant mercy. Choose wisely, for your decision will define your legacy." The courtroom fell into an eerie silence as Shylock grappled with his choices. His eyes darted from Portia to Antonio, and then back again. Finally, the weight of his hatred began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of humanity. With a heavy sigh, Shylock relented. "Fine. I will take the money and release Antonio from the bond. But mark my words, this does not mean that I forgive him or forget what he has done to me." Shylock, finding himself defeated in his cruel intent, said with a disappointed look that he would take the money, and Bassanio, rejoiced beyond measure at Antonio's unexpected deliverance, cried out, "Here is the money." But Portia stopped him, saying, "Softly, there is no haste. The Jew shall have nothing but the penalty. Therefore prepare, Shylock, to cut off the flesh. But mind you shed no blood, nor do not cut off more nor less than just a pound, be it more or less by one poor scruple. Nay, if the scale turn but by the weight of a single hair, you are condemned by the laws of Venice to die, and all your wealth is forfeited to the Senate." "Give me my money and let me go," said Shylock. "I have it ready," said Bassanio. "Here it is." Shylock was going to take the money when Portia again stopped him, saying, "Tarry, Jew, I have yet another hold upon you. By the laws of Venice, your wealth is forfeited to the state for having conspired against the life of one of its citizens, and your life lies at the mercy of the Duke. Therefore down on your knees, and ask him to pardon you." The Duke then said to Shylock, "That you may see the difference of our Christian spirit, I pardon you your life before you ask it. Half your wealth belongs to Antonio, the other half comes to the state." Once the Duke had delivered his merciful verdict, the courtroom erupted with a mix of relief, astonishment, and vindication for Antonio. The air was thick with a sense of justice prevailing over vengeance. Portia's quick thinking and astute interpretation of the bond saved Antonio from a gruesome fate, and her words resonated throughout the hall, leaving no doubt about her wisdom and integrity. Shylock, however, stood there with a look of bitter disappointment. His malicious intentions had been thwarted, and he now faced not only the loss of half his wealth, but also the humiliation of begging for mercy. The room fell silent as Shylock reluctantly knelt before the Duke, his pride shattered. In that moment, the stark contrast between the Christian mercy extended to him and the merciless nature of Shylock's own desires was on full display. The Duke's act of pardoning before being asked revealed the magnanimity of the Christian spirit, while Shylock, with every fibre of his being, embodied the cold and unyielding pursuit of revenge. The weight of the law hung heavy over Shylock's head. As he contemplated the consequences of his actions, he couldn't help but reflect on the bitter irony that his scheme to exact revenge had ultimately led to his own downfall. The forfeiture of his wealth to Antonio and the state served as a stark reminder that one's wicked intentions can have dire consequences. With the trial coming to a close, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted from tension to a mixture of awe and disbelief. The resounding applause for Portia's brilliant legal mind echoed throughout the room, paying tribute to her remarkable intellect and unwavering commitment to justice. Even Gratiano couldn't help but join in the chorus of praise, acknowledging the arrival of a true judge in Portia. As the proceedings drew to an end, Shylock, defeated and humiliated, slipped away, leaving behind the wealth he had pursued so relentlessly. The courtroom emptied, each person taking with them the indelible impressions of justice, redemption, and the power of a wise and upright judge. And so the tale of Shylock and the pound of flesh reached its conclusion, a powerful reminder that mercy and compassion have the power to triumph over hatred and vengeance. The events that had unfolded would forever be etched in the annals of Venice, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring pursuit of justice. The scene was filled with mirth and laughter as Portia and Nerissa playfully teased their husbands about the exchange of rings. The joyful banter continued, with Bassanio and Gratiano admitting their momentary lapses in judgment and pledging their love and devotion to their wives. Portia, with her sharp wit and quick tongue, forgave Bassanio for his reluctance to part with the ring, understanding the significance it held for him. She lovingly reminded him that their marriage was built on trust and honesty, and the ring was merely a symbol of their bond. Bassanio, deeply moved by Portia's grace and understanding, vowed to cherish and honor her forever. Meanwhile, Nerissa and Gratiano resolved their own minor spat, realizing that their love was too strong to be shaken by a simple ring. They embraced each other, laughing at their foolishness, and promised to always communicate openly and honestly. As the evening progressed, The couples revelled in each other's company, sharing stories and anecdotes, and relishing in the happiness that surrounded them. Antonio, the loyal friend, looked on with contentment, grateful for the harmony that had been restored, and for the wisdom of the remarkable woman at his side. Portia's home, Belmont, became a sanctuary of love and joy. The moon continued to cast its gentle glow, illuminating the beautiful estate and reflecting the radiant smiles on the faces of its inhabitants. The music from within seemed to weave a magical tapestry, serenading the night with melodies that resonated deep within their hearts. With every passing moment, Portia and Bassanio's love grew stronger, fortified by their shared experiences and trials. Their marriage was a testament to the power of trust, forgiveness, and unwavering devotion. And as they looked at each other, their eyes filled with love and adoration. They knew that their journey together had only just begun. The tale of the ring served as a reminder that love could triumph over misunderstandings, and that true happiness lay in the strength of their union. And as they embraced, Portia whispered to Bassanio, "Let this be a lesson for us, my love, to always cherish and appreciate the precious gifts we have been given." And so, in the sanctuary of Belmont, surrounded by love and laughter, Portia and her beloved Bassanio, along with their dear friends Antonio and Nerissa, embarked on a lifetime of happiness and fulfillment, forever grateful for the obstacles they had overcome and the love that had brought them together.